Hello and howdy. Today, I am so excited to welcome Chris Sainty to the Speaker DevReach Spotlight for 2023. Chris is a Microsoft MVP, author, software engineer, and has over 17 years of experience with ASP.NET, which is so amazing. When I learned this, I was like, I don't have 17 years of experience in anything. So I feel humbled.
I don't know if
but
it's
his,
good. I don't know if it's good experience.
but it's there, right?
It's there. Yeah.
Chris, I am so excited to welcome you today. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule and doing this interview with me. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm really happy to be here. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, yeah, excellent. So, your session at DevReach is covering Tailwind, the hottest CSS library out there, and how you can use it to make beautiful Blazor applications. So, I was wondering, with over 17 years of ASP.NET experience, what drew you to Blazor when it came out?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, um, I think it's probably fair to say that .NET's always been considered very much the server-side technology. Obviously, it's always been, even for building websites, it's been server-rendered stuff, web forms,
Yeah.
and then MVC, Razor pages, all this kind of stuff. But I think generally speaking, a lot of places that use .NET use it to sort of build a lot of backend services, APIs, things like that. And it's a fantastic technology for all that, obviously. And certainly that's what I've done a lot of. But I am a very front end orientated person. Like, I feel like often developers tend to fall into two categories. You're either someone who thinks at the database first and then moves forward, or you're someone who starts at a UI and moves backwards. I'm very much
Yes.
the latter of those two. And I've always really enjoyed UI. I've enjoyed, doing user experience, UI
Mm.
design, all that kind of stuff. Um, and like I've always felt a bit weird in the .NET world because
I was
that's
actually
not.
gonna ask that question. I was like,
Yeah.
"Do you feel like an outsider?" Because I'm entering the .NET world, and it feels like they think the majority of developers think backwards from UI first.
Yeah, and it's that kind of, yeah, it's a bit weird. So I'm like, I kind of really like the UI side, but this framework doesn't have UI that, or isn't as popular part of the framework.
Right.
Um, I enjoy I enjoy working on the whole stack, but
Mm.
really to what it came to is when we were doing sort of serious UI work and spas came about, it meant moving into JavaScript. So I initially did Angular JS for a number of years. Then I moved to Angular, um, the completely different framework with the same name.
Yeah.
I did that for a while, and things. But ultimately, I really love C Sharp and that language. I think C Sharp's a fantastic language and what have you. And .NET's a
Mhm.
great framework. So basically, when Blazor came along, I was like, hold on, is this actually the bit of the puzzle that's been missing for me? Is this, can I finally use my .NET skills
Yeah.
to build front end applications that can run client side and do all that rich UI work that we've kind of always had to use JavaScript for.
Mm.
Um, and it was, and I was like, wow. So I kind of like jumped all over it, and yeah, it was it was a random YouTube binge that got me to it. I was just randomly binging YouTube as you do, and down this hole that I don't know where I was. And all of a sudden, it threw up a talk from Steve Sarnison at NDC in
Oh my
2017, and
gosh,
I was
that's
just
so
like,
funny.
"Oh, that's really cool." And then I like immediately tried to find the repo and found that, and then found that it had already moved out of Steve's repo into an experimental repo that Microsoft owned. And then I was trying to get it to build from source, and I
Mm.
couldn't. And then that worked out really well because literally like 2 days later, they they released the first preview version, or like the first experimental preview version, like the
So you, like, got in,
0.10.
like, under
Yeah, I
the
like proper got in there. Yeah, it's just like perfect timing. So,
dang.
and then on top of that, I was like, I'd been wanting to sort of get into blogging properly, and I'd started a blog, but it'd kind of been a lot of false starts, and I'd
Mm.
done a few sort of posts here and there on random things, but I hadn't really found like my niche and things. I was like,
Mm.
I should blog about this. This would be cool. So I wrote a blog post like called like what is Blazor and why is it so exciting, and like um it's like a 1,000 odd word blog post that I'd like literally nailed in like, an hour, which I've never ever
Yeah.
done since. um, and it was just done off pure energy and just real
Mm.
excitement. And yeah, and then so yeah, from there I sort of regularly started blogging about Blazor and
Mm.
everything. And yeah, and the rest is kind of all come after that. So various different things. Yeah.
But it has been the missing piece. Like it's lived up
Yeah.
to what you wanted it to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with .NET 8 as well, I think it's going to be it's a really maturing framework now. Like it's certainly very young in comparison to
Mm,
the likes of Angular or React and things like this, which obviously it gets compared to all the time. And often that's a slightly unfair comparison because
yeah.
those frameworks have got 4 or 5 years head start. It's it's a bit of a different story, but I think the innovation and the speed of innovation that's coming out of
Mm,
the team at Microsoft on Blazor is really impressive. And like I say, I think the changes with .NET 8 are uh, going to be fantastic. I think unifying the hosting models, making it all much simpler in terms of not having to pick one at the start. You can just build a Blazor app and then go, this bit should render on the server, this bit should render on the client. Like this bit shouldn't be interactive. It should just render HTML and just be really quick and sort of more like a
mm,
static site. I think that kind of flexibility is really appealing, and I think it's also interesting to see that a lot of the JavaScript frameworks are now trying to do server-side rendering to improve
yes.
performance, which
Yes.
again, Blazor has a huge head start on because Microsoft are very good
Mm.
at that. They've been doing that for 20 odd years
Yeah.
plus, and so it's just like, yeah, we can make Blazor render server side. That's pretty trivial. Ding ding ding, done. And so it kind of again helps them
Mm,
in when comparing. I think if you're someone doing front end work now and you're
mm.
either looking at JavaScript frameworks or Blazor, I think with .NET 8, Blazor is now like a much closer sort of argument to look at because it's going to have some really cool stuff in it. So
You
yeah,
talk about it being like, behind because these JavaScript frameworks have been out for so long, but it's funny. I was in an Angular panel, and the Angular team has RFCs out asking for the community's feedback on certain features. And there's one where it's moving things like ifs and switches and things into the template, but the syntax is still very much in the air. And I had a commenter who was like, "You all should look at how Blazor's doing this. I really like, And so it's
yeah.
funny how, or even on the server side things you were saying. So there's like a give and a take on where frameworks are at, even ones that have been out for a while. So
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think everyone's always got something to learn from everyone else. Like, there's
Mhm.
always good bits and bad bits in every framework
Mm,
and things. And I think all frameworks are always trying to nab the best bits from other frameworks. Like, I know a lot of the rendering logic from and a lot of the sort of initial design with Blazor was heavily influenced by React.
mm.
And some of the paradigms in there, and they
Yeah.
took a lot of those bits, but then tried to get rid of some of the bits that hadn't worked so well. And this is kind of an advantage of coming a bit later to the game that you get to learn off of everyone
Yes.
else's mistakes, so you can leapfrog,
Yes.
and catch
Which
up quite quick.
honestly is how we should be doing things, right? Like
Yeah,
let's just please not go through all of that pain again.
exactly. Yes, let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's learn and innovate that way. Yeah, stand on the shoulders of giants, as it were.
So we were talking before show about this a little bit, but can you explain Tailwind CSS to devs who've never heard of it, or maybe they know a little bit about it, but they've never used it before?
Yeah. So the way I often describe Tailwind is by comparing it to Bootstrap, because
Hmm.
usually everybody knows Bootstrap. That's usually fairly a common piece of knowledge. So Bootstrap. Oh, my camera's gone. Hold on.
Did it overheat? Mine's getting pretty
It,
spicy
it might
lately.
have done actually. Yeah, I'm just going to swap over to my other one. It's not been hugely. Ah, there we go. Whoa. That's light mode, isn't it?
I just
Wow.
can't believe you have another camera ready to go. Like, who is he?
Yeah, well, I'm not. I may have the same setup at work, and Teams may or may not crash fairly regularly.
Okay. Okay.
um, yeah, this is not my first rodeo, Alyssa. This is yeah, yeah.
I'm
I'm
just
just going to
impressed at
tone
how
things down
quickly
slightly.
you
There we go.
swapped that over. Like 10 out of 10. Amazing.
Oh dear. Yeah. So where were we before my camera
Oh, you were
decided to
saying
die?
that
We
you
were talking
compare it
about
to
Tailwind, weren't we?
Bootstrap, right? Because
That's it. Yeah.
Bootstrap's widely known, or mostly.
Yeah, exactly. So where Bootstrap kind of provides you pre-made components that you can go and use. So, I want a button, you go to the button section in the docs, you copy the markup with the relevant classes on it and you apply it and it's done, or a modal or a tooltip or an alert or something. They're all kind of pre-baked and they all have a certain look. Like, there's everyone jokes about you can tell a bootstrap site from a mile away because they all kind of look the same, which is true to a degree. Like, but that's kind of the trade-off you're getting for the speed of development. You know, you're getting these pre-baked things that are going to give you something that's going to look pretty decent without having to know loads about UI design and things like that. Tailwind is a bit of a different beast. So Tailwind is a utility framework. Now, what that means is that instead of having pre-made components, it's just got lots and lots of really atomic styles. So you end up writing class in your class attribute, you'll end up having loads and loads of class names that are just like affecting usually just one CSS property, maybe, you know, a couple that make sense to kind of being manipulated together, and essentially you compose them together to create the look that you're trying to achieve. Now this is good because you get lots of flexibility. You get you don't get sites that will look the same because you can really fine grain control the design and all this kind of thing. But obviously, if you are looking for something that's just got a look and feel out the box, then you're out of luck. It's not quite that. Now there is Tailwind UI, which is a commercial product that helps fund the open source project, and that's got loads of pre-made components that use the Tailwind library. So if you are looking for pre-made stuff, there is stuff out there. There's also loads and loads of community projects and open source projects that have Tailwind design libraries and things out there as well. So you can definitely still do all that stuff, but that's really the difference. Is one is all about composing small atomic classes, Tailwind, and the other is just using pre-baked components.
Yeah. I love that. That's a really good way, especially because it's drawing upon knowledge that most people already have in design. So it's a really good explanation. So I find it, though, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I found Tailwind to be pretty divisive. People either love it or hate it. And I was wondering, have you run into this mindset when teaching Tailwind? And if so, do you have any theories on why?
Yes, I've run into this quite a lot. Ironically, me and Ed Shabanel have had this debate as well, because Ed is not a fan. He is not.
He literally texted me when he saw I was teaching Tailwind, and he said, "You've gone over to the dark side." And I said, "Oh, honey, I live there. Like, there's no going. Like,
yeah, I've got a vacation home over there. It's all good. It's all good." But yeah, no, it's well, we developers, we like to pick camps, don't we, and argue why one thing's better than another. It's just different. There is definitely a divisive mindset. So there is people usually fall into two camps. You have got the camp of, this is cool, I can kind of do really like pragmatic design, and I can just use the things I need, and I get lots and lots of control, and I'm good with that. Or you kind of get people who fall in the camp of, isn't this just inline styles? Aren't inline styles evil? God, look at my markup. It's so ugly. It's got 50,000 CSS classes. What about semantic CSS? What was that all about? Like, are we just ignoring this now? Blah, blah, blah. And like most things, both people have both sides have points. Like neither side's wrong. Like both of them are true. It's just what you care about.
Yeah.
You know, there's plenty of people out there, and sort of the authors of Tailwind CSS will tell you that, you know, they've done CSS at scale in large projects, and, you know, whether it's BEM syntax or semantic CSS or any of these things at scale, they just don't work. They just always end up going wrong. There always ends up, your CSS becomes a big ball of mud.
Yeah.
Whether you want to use SAS to try and break it down or something like that, that's fine. But again, you kind of now just got smaller chunks of mess, which again might be fine. And that's why they came up with Tailwind, because it was like, well, let's just put it all in the markup, and we can see exactly what's going on because these classes tell us exactly what the styles are. We don't have to go look at what the class name is and then go and find the CSS file that's got it in and look at what's being applied, or, you know, and all this kind of thing. It gets around the problem of, I'm going to create this button style on this page, and then, oh, team B goes and creates the same button style on their page, and now team C goes and does it, and I've got the same style 3 times, but it's got 3 different names.
Yes.
Like, and frankly, I've seen all these things. Like, these are all things that I've encountered that teams I work with have had problems with. And that's why I gravitated to Tailwind. It's because one, I like UI design, so I like the control and the flexibility it gave me, and I like the fact that it was very obvious to me what was happening style wise. I could see everything right in front of me, and and I'm quite a fan of putting things together that kind of make sense to be together. I'm not a class per file person. If I want a class and an enum in the same file because they're related, I'll do that. It's and some people call that heresy, and that's fine as
Yeah,
well. I get that. Like
no,
whatever
no,
makes you
yeah.
happy. Um, and that's the
My
thing.
my friends who have been very avidly against Tailwind were forced recently. My husband and good friend were forced to use it on a project, and I overheard them talking about how they actually kind of like missed it on the projects that they weren't using it. And so I feel like as developers, you're right, we do get into these camps, and I think we're all a lot more similar than we like to.
Yeah. It's interesting how many people I've actually spoken to, or I've taught workshops to, who
Mm.
have adamantly disliked Tailwind,
Yeah.
but not used it, and then used it and gone, "Oh, this is actually kind of
Yeah.
all right, actually."
Yeah.
And
Like,
that's
I'm not hating my life as much as I thought I would,
yeah,
right? And
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Like it's where I work now. So I work for a company called Enable, and I've I joined there, and we've started to use Tailwind there now. But when I first joined, we didn't have it, and
Mm.
it is funny when you get used to it how all of a sudden how difficult it seems to go the other way. I'm like, I've got to open another file to do my styling. Hold on, and I've got to think of a name for this class. I
Yeah.
don't know what it is. Weird squiggly thing in the corner. I don't know.
Yeah, you're
Um,
like, "Alright, I guess I will write out the CSS."
yeah,
I
I'll
like some kind of pleb,
yeah.
right? Like
Isn't there somebody else to do this for me? Like, I
yeah.
don't know. Like, and that's the cool thing I like about Tailwind. Like, I
Mm.
never write CSS when I use Tailwind. Like, it's the only CSS framework I've used where I've never had to write CSS. I'm
Gotcha.
like, that's
Yeah.
pretty cool. Because even
Mm.
something like Bootstrap, you still end up having to do stuff yourself. You still have to
Oh,
go,
yeah.
well, I like that, but I need to override that bit of it or whatever. And you
Yeah.
don't get that with Tailwind.
Mm.
But like I say, there are trade-offs. The trade-off is, yeah, your markup's going to look a bit ugly. It's going to have a lot of classes in it and things.
Yeah.
And there are ways to deal with that as well, and
Mm.
all these things. But yeah, you can't make everyone happy. That's the point. And I think that's why we've got lots of different frameworks. You pick the one that you like and what makes you happy. I think that's the key thing for everybody, really.
Oh, absolutely. So, with Tailwind, do you have a favorite feature or something that you really like to use it for in your UI that you like when you don't have it? You're like, "Tailwind, rawr."
Yes, everything.
Oh,
No, it's like generally speaking, like I say, it's a bit of a cop out answer, but yeah, I pretty much miss everything when I'm not
mm,
using it because it is just so fast and simple to get on with. I think in
mm,
terms of cool features that I think are really trivial to do in Tailwind, but are always something that I end up having to Google the syntax or whatever when I'm doing it in regular stuff is like gradients is
ooh,
one. Like I
yeah.
can easily create a gradient and I can just like literally go like from blue 500 to
Right.
purple
Yeah,
500, boom, gradient. Like
yeah. I
it's like
literally spent 20 minutes yesterday working on a linear gradient and, like, modifying like, I had the math drawn out for the percentages, so, like, I
yeah,
literally know what you're talking
yeah, it's just like, oh, I don't need that pain in my life. I just want to boom and I'm done. And in three and in like I think it's 3.3 they
Mm,
brought out like the ability to add like more, so it could just be one color to one color previously, and now you can do like via another color, so you can get like three in there
yeah.
and stuff like that. So that's cool. Another little really, it's a really niche feature, but I think it looks really cool in the right scenario. Is they do colored box shadows. So where
Oh.
you've got a drop shadow on like an element,
Mhm.
you can do colored versions in tat. So that you can just do like shadow blue 500, and you get like a blue shadow
Oh.
underneath something, and which is a really niche thing, but I just thought it was really cool and stuff because I've not really seen too much of that. So that's pretty cool.
Thank
Um,
you. These are so cool. Like, I honestly hadn't done gradients very much in Tailwind, and so, like or even the shadow, so these are, like, neat things I'm learning.
Yeah, yeah, it's really cool. And there's this like little quality life thing, like that you have you can put a group class on a parent,
Mm,
and then on the child elements you can say like group hover da da da, and then it will
mm,
kind of sort of cascade hover effects up like around it. There's just all stuff like that. It's got so many of these things that if you were just writing them in pure CSS, you would have to. They're more fiddly and
Yes.
things like that. So it just gets,
Especially with like the consistency between developers between time, right? I think
yeah,
that's
exactly.
where
That's
the
kind of the thing.
fiddliness is compounded.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's the thing. And that the fact that it's an underlying it is a design system, like it's all powered by a config file that you can tailor specifically to like your company's design system. It has your fonts in it, your, I don't know, your padding system or whatever, and you can just have all that built in, and then you're making everyone's lives easier because they can only kind of pick the things that you've kind of
Right.
set for your design system, the colors or whatever.
Mm.
So that's another big benefit if in more of a corporate environment in a bigger project, and things. So it's got a lot of cool things in it. But yeah, there're probably some highlights I would call out.
So I haven't used Blazor very much. Is it hard to bootstrap Tailwind into a Blazor application?
Um, I don't think it's too bad. There's a couple of ways of doing it, and funnily enough, that's something I talk about in the talk. So if
Oh,
you're
nice.
coming, you'll get to see that. But yeah, there's a Tailwind CLI, which basically does all of the heavy lifting, really. So
Mm.
you can run that from npm. You can run it like using like npx and just run it, and you basically point it at a source file and an output file, and it kind of
I
off it goes.
didn't know Blazor people use MPX. I'm seriously like, really?
Some
Wait,
of us
what?
do. Like,
What?
yeah, it, Blazor works with all the tools.
Okay. I
It
had no
interops
idea.
with all this stuff. Yeah, it works with that. It's yeah, whether individual developers want to use those tools, different
Right.
story, but it
Mm.
works with all those things. So you can do
Oh,
that, or
cool.
they also do a standalone CLI that's
Mm.
built as a standalone executable. So you can go to their GitHub repo and you can download it, and you can just execute that as just a normal kind of binary. Then you don't need to rely on Node and
Right.
npx and things. So if you don't want to bring that kind of ecosystem into your app, you can just do it that way instead. But it's the same principle. You just run the CLI, give it an input file, an output file, it reads your configuration file, and off it goes and does its thing. And you can even do cool stuff like you can integrate it into your CS proj file, so it will run the Tailwind CLI when you're doing like CI builds in a build pipeline in, say, like GitHub Actions and stuff, so it can
Okay.
build your Tailwind styles every time you check in your code and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
So yeah, it's really sort of fairly straightforward to get up and going with. But like I say, if you want to see it in action, you can see it in the talk.
See it in that talk. So on that note, what are you most excited for about DevReach 2023? Have you ever been to Bulgaria?
I've never been to Bulgaria. This is going to be my first time, so I am very excited about that. So I've heard nothing but good things.
Excellent.
Some friends have traveled there as well and said really good things. So yeah, I'm really excited to do that. Really excited to go to a DevReach. So there's just, frankly, I'm not sure why I'm there, because there's some really, really good speakers. I'm like, did you make it? I'm like, Alyssa, did you mean to email me? Did you mean another Chris? So yeah, so that's gonna be cool. I get to hang out with some speaker friends I've not seen for a little while. So our mutual friend Layla, I've not seen Layla for a little while. Nick as
Oh
well,
yeah. Yep.
Arena. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna
Oh,
be a
seriously,
good
if you
time.
haven't gotten tickets yet, it's gonna be a lot. There's a lot of cool people, not just on the .NET side. There's a lot of cool JavaScripters too, so it's gonna be good. Like,
Yeah.
well, thank you, darling, so much for taking time to interview with me today. I cannot wait to see your talk and get to hang out with you. Once we in October once we land and touch down in Bulgaria. So
Yeah. Exciting times. I'm looking forward to it.
excellent.
It's gonna be fun.
Awesome. And again, if you haven't gotten tickets yet and you can make it to that side of the world, come hang out with us. We'd love to see you. So that is all. I'm signing off with a teaser, but we'll see you next time for the next interview.